So, John, thank you very much for taking the time. I'm curious how you came to be involved with this project.
Right. So I met the director, Mo McCrae, on another film set. His wife was acting in it. Lex Scott Davis is his wife, and she was an actor in a film I did in Alabama, in Montgomery, called Son of the South. Mm-hmm. And Mo came to visit Lex one of the weekends that we were off, and she said, you really should meet John Rosario. I think you guys will get along. And she set up kind of like this meeting between the two of us, and we went and we actually went to go see a baseball game, a second division baseball game in Montgomery, the Biscuits. And then we went and got some dinner. And we just talked, man. We talked about art, philosophy, our journeys. We talked about just things that make us tick as artists. And we carry that relationship even after our meeting in Montgomery. We would text each other just pictures that we thought were interesting, from other photographers. We would talk about films that we were watching that were like really bizarre and unique, and certain things that stood out. And it wasn't, all this wasn't with the intention of, I have a movie, let's talk creative stuff. It was just a true creative friendship, And then when his film came along, he was like, he hit me up about it, and I said yes before even reading the script.
So, what's the on-set collaboration like with Mo? How do the two of you work together in terms of planning out the shot structure, planning what you want to do? Obviously, I want to talk about the one shot to kick it off for a while here, but I want to hear how you guys work together.
I'll start by saying that collaborating with Mo, for me, is incredibly fulfilling, because he gives you the ability and the platform to express yourself, to really contribute your part and your edge to it. And, I'm a big fan of pre-production. I think it's one of my favorite phases in the whole process, because through pre-production, you're able to just kind of like discover and the core of the philosophy of the story and the core of the visual language of the film. And Mo and I, throughout this process, were really specific, really deliberate. Everything was important. Everything needed a purpose, and we looked to add subtext to every visual choice. For example, there's a moment in the film where our two leads, James and Vanessa, played by Ilan and Cleopatra, they were having a tense discussion, and James himself is just feeling trapped and feeling, suffocated. He was like feeling suffocated. And so what we did, we decided to shoot through on the house. There's a second floor little balcony with with some railings. And so we decided to shoot through the railings with this foreground to show how trapped these two people are. But to take it to another level, there was some circular design on the railing, and we put James's head within that railing to show that he's like really trapped and just suffocating. And so we look for opportunities to add these visual metaphors, these visual subtexts, to just add weight and interest and to the story and the visual language. So throughout the process, we look to we search for those moments to really say something with the visuals. It was never, oh, this is a cool shot, let's do it. No, it was more so, okay, what does this shot mean? What is happening in the scene? Who is the scene about? How can we use the camera to reinforce the feelings that the characters are feeling?
I did want to ask you about the one shot, which kicks off the film. It's incredibly impressive technically, but I think it's also what you're saying about the plot purpose, because I think it obviously there's an immense amount of skill in making a shot like that, but it feels like it's almost this building of pressure for the outlet of the sex at the end of the scene. So I'm curious what it was like, what was your process in planning and constructing a shot with that level of technical depth and artistic depth?
Yeah, it's the wonder was always there. It was always in the back of our mind when we were getting close to shooting it. We kind of dreaded getting there because it is a big undertaking, and it's a very job. And so as we approached and got closer, it started to become more real and real. But during pre-production, actually day one of pre-production between Mo and I, we decided to talk about the oneer. And philosophically, we cracked the code on what we wanted the camera to say on that day. And then, we'd sprinkle conversations to continue further improving what the camera needs to do or wants to say. And, we went in dissecting this 17-page, 17-minute oneer, looking at what the characters are saying and dissecting moments. It's a 2-person scene as they migrate around the house. But in this moment, in that moment, who is the scene more weighted on? Who is the scene more about? And with those discussions and with those discoveries, we would decide, okay, so the camera will not stay in a 2-shot. It'll actually go on to James as we hear what Vanessa is saying and see what James is feeling, and vice versa. We would go to Vanessa as we see what she's feeling based on what James is saying. So we made these deliberate choices on favoring actors at different parts of the scene. There's one moment where we decide to just Vanessa moves and gets a drink, and we leave James completely and we stay on Vanessa, and we see James soft in the background as Vanessa's having this moment, and James is speaking, and we don't even pull the focus to James because this is about Vanessa and what she's feeling and what she's processing. And then eventually Vanessa says something that triggers James, and so now the camera moves past her and lands on James, so we can see how that really affected him. So throughout this process, from a philosophical point of view, we took these deliberate choices and tried to add these level of subtext. We use a lot of reflections. There's one moment where James is going to get a weapon and he's going to leave the door, and Vanessa says, "Wait, why don't you get your gun?" And we're on James the entire time, but we hear Vanessa say this, and then we see James's back. And we have this moment of anticipation, like, what is he going to say? What is he going to do? And he turns around and says something to her. And instead of going to Vanessa, we go to a reflection of her that's a bit disoriented, and which is indicative of the wild request that she just made. So throughout this whole process, it was a lot of that, like finding these interesting and subtextual moments in the photography to further enhance the feeling. That's from a philosophical standpoint. Now, from a technical standpoint, lighting and shooting a 17-minute oneer is and so I'm in pre-production, and Mo looks over and he goes, there's a moment in the script where we're in this scene where things become incredibly tense, and the flip is kind of the script is kind of flipped. And Mo leans over to me. He goes, "Hey, what do you think if we went handheld in this moment?" And while I agreed with him fully, because I think that was it was just the right choice in that moment, my mind was just kind of working on, like, okay, how do we detach the camera from the Steadicam and go into handheld mode without hiding a cut? Because we didn't want to hide a cut anyway. We wanted it to be uninterrupted, continuous. And so we call our Steadicam operator, Gant, who's incredible at what he does. And he pulled off this oneer, which is cool. And, we expressed to him what we were looking for. He and the key grip, Phil Collins, came up with an incredible idea. Phil Collins, also a great human being. And so we discovered that the best way to transition from the Steadicam to handheld mode, it was a 6-handed operation. I had an easy rig, which is a camera support system, and I'm hiding in the corner somewhere, out of sight. Aaron is, on the Steadicam, going around doing his thing, and in about minute 15 or so, he gets into position, and Philip and I, we sneak up behind Aaron on the Steadicam. Aaron is holding the Steadicam steady because there's a transition that needs to happen, so we don't want it to shake. Phil then disengages the camera. With the other hand, he's connecting me to the camera. And both of my hands holding the camera. So now we have this 6-hand operation, this 6-handed trade-off. And then eventually go back and I continue forward in handheld mode and I get really close with them, really intimate, really like subtle handheld, fishing for these moments. And it was just a really beautiful experience. We did 9 takes. I believe I discovered yesterday that take 7 was the one that we used. And one of the producers, Annie Clemens, he said, after take 7, people at Video Village were in tears because of how great everything worked for them. And they were really, because again, pulling this off, not only a 17-minute oneer with the actors, with all departments, moving furniture, sound department being out of shots and reflections. Our crew did an incredible job, hiding our lights and just hiding in general. Our focus puller, Aaron Chung, pulling that off. I mean, that's incredible. Going from Steadicam to handheld and just this different, it's just unbelievable what he was able to pull off from a focus standpoint. And then kudos to the actors for just never breaking character while all this madness is happening around them. And so when it finally clicked and the producers and everyone at Video Village saw this, they just were in tears. Like, wow, I can't believe we pulled that off. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. I actually wanted to ask about Cleopatra and Ilan in that scene and how you have to work with them, I guess, to give them the space that they need, both physically and emotionally for their performances, while also getting what you need from a technical perspective, and how that, I guess, planning and workshopping happens.
Yeah, I mean, really, it was a beautiful dance between everyone involved, and the actors were so gracious and not only performing incredibly, but also giving us the ability to request certain things of them. Like can you eventually make your way here and there and there, and then them remembering those things. Because you're right, we did want to give them the space to perform, but we also wanted to hit specific marks that would help us with this subtextual philosophical camera choices that we were making. So really generous of them to allow us to make those requests of them. We pre-lit and rehearsed in a full day. So we took half the day to pre-light everything around the house. And then the other half of the day, we did a little rehearsal with the camera, with the actors, and we were able to kind of work out the kinks before we actually went to shoot it the following day. And it was great because we discovered it was a full collaboration. We discovered what worked, what didn't work, things that the actors needed, and things that we needed, and we kind of all worked together to just make it happen. And it was really great. And then the following day, we went for it. It was very nervous that the start of the day, but.
I did want to ask you about the lighting. In that shot in particular, the first shot of them on the couch, and you have the pink on Cleopatra and the blue on Ilan. And I thought that was just a really remarkable and sharp deployment of color in that scene. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on your thinking in terms of color.
Yeah. So, from the beginning, Mo really wanted the look of the film from a color standpoint to have its own texture and weight and philosophy behind it. And, you usually hear that red and blue are opposites in certain environments. And we took to that. And it helped us, because the pink in Vanessa was not only made her softer and subtle, but there's like a quiet fire in her, and James, he with the blue, he tries to, he's kind of, it was interesting because he's a bit kind of cold to her in the beginning of this scene and kind of just like indifferent, and he's very cool and very tries to be neutral and very precise. And so it's interesting that, and it's also a softer blue too. So it gave these characters just like a softer feeling of opposites with some quiet forces that were ready to erupt. Like, the pink in Vanessa, eventually that'll just be fire red. The subtle blue in Ilan, that'll just eventually be ice and just, so we tried to find those moments where certain colors, said certain things, and hopefully it translated. Some things don't get translated well, but hopefully these did.
Another shot from later in the film that I thought was really remarkable, and that is during the birth scene and the focus on Shamir's face when he's reacting to everything around him. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you were going for and Mo was going for in that sequence, because it's really it's beautiful. The light coming in behind him, it's remarkable.
Mo and I have this thing that again, the pre-production for us was so important, and it allowed us to just be fully in sync with each other's thoughts and feelings. And there were incredible moments on set where I would be thinking exactly what he'd be thinking, and vice versa. And in that sequence, we have some, extreme close-ups and really, and we switched to slow motion. And I really don't remember how we came to the choice of going to slow motion for these textural parts of Shamir. But it just felt right. I think it was a decision on set, actually, where Mo and I were talking about it. And he said, let's do a pass in slow-mo. Let's try to really emphasize what Shamir is going through. Because in some ways, it's the birth of their child, but also a rebirth of Shamir and the start of his journey. And so it just felt right to be really close on him and be, and have this slower, ethereal feeling. We actually did increase the light outside of the curtain too. It's just kind of glow him a little bit and just give this feeling of rebirth, a birth, not just for his child, but for him as well. And yeah, it was a beautiful scene. And even then it was just, I operated that and just being close to Shamir and kind of receiving his energy and giving that back to him and just kind of like dancing with these actors. It was just a beautiful, poetic experience,
Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I think you've done some remarkable work here, and I hope a whole lot of people get the chance to see it soon. I congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, John.
Best of luck.